the world had already seen cities erased in seconds. Hiroshima and Nagasaki proved that humanity had unlocked a power capable of ending civilization. Yet, in the silence of the Cold War, another force was being prepared, something far beyond imagination, something designed not just to destroy a city but to terrify an entire planet. This was the Tsar Bomba. While the atomic bombs dropped on Japan carried yields of roughly 15 and 21 kilotons, enough to flatten cities and change history forever, the weapon developed by the Soviet Union would operate on a scale so extreme that even scientists struggled to comprehend it. The Tsar Bomba reached an unprecedented 58 megatons in its original design, more than 3,000 times more powerful than Hiroshima. A single detonation capable of rewriting the laws of fear and power. Had such a weapon been dropped on a populated region, the destruction would have been beyond calculation. Entire metropolitan areas would vanish, infrastructure would be erased, and human survival would be nearly impossible. This realization leads directly to the reason why the bomb was never intended for war, but for a message. In the shadow of American nuclear dominance, the Soviet Union sought to prove that it was not merely keeping pace, but surpassing expectations. The Tsar Bomba was not a battlefield weapon, it was a declaration, a warning, a demonstration that the Soviet arsenal could reach unimaginable levels of destruction. To carry out this test, the Soviets selected Novaya Zemlya, a remote Arctic archipelago far from major population centers, yet even in isolation the consequences were staggering. The explosion shattered windows hundreds of kilometers away, unleashed an enormous shock wave, and released an energy pulse so intense it circled the Earth multiple times. The mushroom cloud rose higher than any ever recorded, climbing into the stratosphere, towering nearly 7 times higher than Mount Everest, its top spreading across dozens of miles, visible from incredible distances, a symbol of raw destructive potential unmatched in human history. At ground level, the effects were just as severe. Seismic sensors recorded tremors equivalent to a 5.0 to 5.25 magnitude earthquake. Buildings collapsed far from the blast site, radio communications failed, and the atmosphere itself carried the shockwave across continents. But beyond sheer power, what truly separated the Tsar Bomba from earlier nuclear weapons was its design. Traditional atomic bombs rely on nuclear fission, the splitting of heavy uranium atoms, releasing energy in a rapid chain reaction, devastating yet limited in scale. The Tsar Bomba, however, was a thermonuclear weapon, a hydrogen bomb, built on fusion rather than fission. Instead of breaking atoms apart, it forced them together, replicating the same process that powers the stars themselves, releasing energy on a cosmic scale. To initiate this reaction, a fission bomb was used as a trigger, generating the immense heat and pressure needed to fuse hydrogen nuclei. This multi-stage design allowed the weapon to escalate its power dramatically, resulting in a blast unlike anything seen before. Originally, the Tsar Bomba was designed to reach 100 megatons, a level of destruction so extreme that fallout alone would have accounted for a quarter of all nuclear radiation produced since the invention of atomic weapons. Such a detonation would have endangered the aircraft delivering it and contaminated vast regions of the planet. As a result, Soviet engineers modified the design, replacing uranium components with lead to reduce radioactive fallout. Even then, the final yield of 50 megatons was enough to make it the most powerful explosion ever created by humans. On October 30, 1961, the bomb was carried by a specially modified Tu-95 bomber, piloted by Major Andrei Dernovtsev. The aircraft was painted white to reflect thermal radiation, and the bomb was attached to a massive parachute to slow its descent, giving the crew precious seconds to escape. Despite these precautions, the odds of survival were estimated at only 50%. When the bomb detonated at 13,000 feet above the Arctic terrain, the shockwave struck the aircraft with incredible force, causing it to drop hundreds of meters before the pilot regained control. Meanwhile, settlements more than 200 kilometers away were heavily damaged, wooden structures were completely destroyed, brick buildings cracked or collapsed, and witnesses felt the heat even at distances exceeding 170 miles. The explosion was so powerful that its shockwaves traveled around the Earth 3 times, detected by seismic instruments across the globe. Windows shattered as far away as Norway and Finland, carried by atmospheric focusing. proving that distance offered little protection against such force. Despite its terrifying scale, the Tsar Bomba paradoxically produced relatively low radioactive fallout compared to its size, because nearly 97% of its yield came from fusion rather than fission, making it cleaner than smaller atomic bombs, yet no less devastating. The detonation represented not just technological achievement, but psychological warfare. It sent a clear message to the United States and the world: the Soviet Union possessed the ability to annihilate entire regions. Escalation was no longer theoretical, it was real. For American strategists, the test reinforced the urgency of arms control. Escalation had reached a point where further development no longer increased security, but threatened global extinction. The Tsar Bomba became a turning point in Cold War thinking. In the aftermath, both superpowers began to reconsider unrestricted nuclear testing, leading eventually to treaties limiting atmospheric detonations. The realization had set in that humanity was playing with forces beyond its ability to control. Today, the Tsar Bomba remains unmatched. No weapon before or since has approached its scale. It stands as a monument to human ingenuity and human recklessness, a reminder of how close the world came to unleashing power capable of ending civilization. If such a device were detonated over a modern city like New York, Chicago, Washington, D.C., or London, the result would be immediate and total destruction. Metropolitan areas would cease to exist, life would be erased, and the consequences would reshape the planet itself. The Tsar Bomba was never meant to be used, it was meant to be seen, to be feared, and to be remembered, a silent warning echoing through history, that the greatest threat to humanity is not technology itself, but the willingness to use it.